The night was heavy over the Vatican. Beyond the ancient walls, distant air raid sirens wailed across Rome, cutting through the darkness like wounded cries. Somewhere beyond the city, bombs were falling. Somewhere, lives were ending. Somewhere, children were dying. Inside a silent chapel, Pope Pius XII knelt alone. No advisors, no diplomats, no guards. Only a trembling candle, the crucifix before him, and the unbearable weight of a world at war. He had prayed this way many nights before, but this night was different. As the shepherd of souls during the darkest war in human history, Pius XII carried a question that would not leave his heart. What happens to innocent souls who die in a world drowning in sin? Children who never chose hatred, children who never fired a weapon, children whose last breath was taken by the crimes of adults. Were they at peace, or were they still suffering, unseen, unheard, forgotten? In this very channel, thousands of you have placed your trust in prayer. In the comments of every video, you have written the names of loved ones, parents, children, forgotten souls, asking that they not be abandoned in purgatory. Those prayers matter more than you know. And tonight, as we enter one of the most mysterious visions ever whispered about Pope Pius XII, we ask you to continue this act of faith. If you carry a soul in your heart, write their name in the comments. Let us pray together, across time, across suffering, across death itself. Because what Pius XII witnessed that night was never officially recorded. No document, no proclamation, only a trembling memory passed quietly through the shadows of history. A vision of a child's soul, a place of fire and mercy, and a truth so terrifying it changed how he understood war, innocence, and the responsibility of the living forever. Stay until the end and pray for the souls in purgatory. In March of 1939, as the world stood on the edge of collapse, Eugenio Pacelli was elected pope. He took the name Pius XII. Within months, Europe would burn. Borders vanished, cities fell, nations turned against one another, and as armies marched, bombs did not choose their victims. They fell on homes, on churches, on schools, on children who had no understanding of hatred or ideology. By the time the war reached its full fury, millions of children had perished. Some were buried beneath rubble, some vanished in fire. Many were never named, never mourned, never prayed for. From the windows of the Apostolic Palace, Pope Pius XII could hear Rome at night, the echo of sirens, the distant thunder of explosions, the cries of a city under judgment. Yet the world watched the Pope with a different question. Why did he not shout louder? Why did he not condemn more openly? Why did he remain silent? But silence was not emptiness. Pius XII carried a burden few could see. Every word he spoke could ignite retaliation. Every public condemnation could cost thousands more lives. Every decision was weighed between moral truth and catastrophic consequence. So he chose a path that history would struggle to understand. Diplomacy in public, intercession in secret, prayer in the dark hours of the night. While governments demanded declarations, the Pope knelt. While armies advanced, he fasted. While the world screamed, he whispered prayers for souls already lost. And among those souls, one group tormented his conscience above all others: children. Not soldiers, not leaders, not executioners, children, whose blood stained the earth because adults had failed. In the stillness of the Vatican, Pope Pius XII would ask a question that no council could answer and no document could resolve. What becomes of the smallest souls when the sins of the world crush them before they can grow? It was this question, born of war, silence, and unbearable responsibility, that opened the door to a vision he never sought and never forgot.
War does not remember names. It remembers victories, borders, dates, and numbers. But the smallest victims, the children, vanish into silence. They died in cellars as buildings collapsed above them. They died on roads while fleeing with nothing but their mother's hand. They died alone, far from home, with no priest, no candle, no final prayer whispered over their bodies. Many were never buried. No stone marked where they fell. No cross bore their name. No bell rang to announce their passing. Their lives ended without ceremony, without farewell, and too often without remembrance. In the chaos of war, the world moved on quickly. Armies advanced, governments collapsed, new tragedies replaced the old, and the souls of these children slipped quietly into eternity, unseen by those still breathing. From within the Vatican, Pope Pius XII was painfully aware of this forgotten multitude. Reports arrived daily, cities destroyed, villages erased, families shattered. But behind every statistic was a child who would never grow old, never learn to pray fully, never understand why the world had turned against them. What troubled the Pope was not only how they died, but what followed after. For soldiers, there were chaplains. For martyrs, there were prayers. For leaders, there were memorials. But for these children, no mass offered in their name, no rosary prayed for their soul, no voice left to speak for them. Late at night, kneeling before the tabernacle, Pope Pius XII allowed a question to rise, one that few dared to ask aloud. Do these children suffer after death? If they had not chosen evil, if they had not understood sin, if they had barely begun to live, could they still be touched by the consequences of a world steeped in guilt? The thought pierced him. For if even the innocent could be forgotten in death, then the tragedy of war reached beyond the battlefield, into eternity itself. And it was in this sorrowful meditation, surrounded by the silence of forgotten souls, that the boundary between prayer and vision began to thin. It happened on a night that was never written down. No date was recorded, no witness was summoned. Only the memory remained. The chapel was dark, lit by a single lamp near the tabernacle. Pope Pius XII kneeled as he always did, his hands folded, his breathing steady, his mind fixed on prayer. Outside, Rome lay uneasy beneath the threat of war. Then the air changed. The warmth of the room faded, not suddenly, as if the life had been gently drawn out of it. A chill crept across the marble floor, rising slowly, deliberately, until it reached his knees and chest. It was not the cold of winter, it was deeper, heavier. The Pope paused. Near the tabernacle, a faint glow appeared. It was not candlelight, it did not flicker, it did not cast shadows. It simply was, a soft, pale radiance, pulsing as though it breathed. At the same moment, a scent filled the chapel. Smoke. Not the smoke of incense, not the smoke of fire. There was no flame, no heat, no ash, only the unmistakable presence of something that had burned somewhere else. Pius XII rose slowly to his feet, his heart pounding, every instinct sharpened by years of spiritual discernment. He had studied theology, mysticism, and the writings of the saints. He knew the difference between imagination and intrusion. This was neither dream nor distraction. A pressure settled upon his soul, solemn, weighty, undeniable. And in that stillness, without a voice, without a word, understanding came to him with terrifying clarity. This is not from this world. Whatever stood before him did not belong to the living, nor fully to the dead, and the veil between heaven and earth had begun to open.
The light near the tabernacle slowly began to change. It did not grow brighter, it grew deeper, as if it were gathering itself into form. From within that pale radiance, a small figure emerged. A child. Not an angel, not a vision of glory, but a child, slight, fragile, unmistakably human. The soul stood no taller than a boy of 7 or 8. His outline shimmered, neither fully solid nor fading away. His clothes were torn, marked by ash and dust, as though they still remembered the moment of destruction. Along his arms and side were wounds, not bleeding, not open, but etched into the light itself, memories of shrapnel and falling stone. Yet there was nothing frightening about him. No twisted features, no screams, no accusation. Only suffering, quiet, restrained, unbearably gentle. The child did not cry. His eyes, large and dark, looked directly at Pope Pius XII. They held no fear, no anger, no confusion, only a deep, silent endurance, the kind that comes when pain has lasted too long to be expressed in tears. For a moment, neither spoke. The Pope felt his knees weaken. Every instinct urged him to kneel, yet he remained standing, frozen between awe and sorrow. Before him was not a symbol, not a metaphor, but a soul that should have been at peace. Slowly the child took a step forward. The light around him trembled, as though each movement required effort beyond human strength. The air grew heavier, thick with a sorrow that seemed to press against the walls of the chapel. Then, at last, the child spoke. His voice was soft, clear, unbroken. Not the voice of despair, but of truth. "Holy Father, I am not in heaven." The words struck Pius XII like a blow to the heart. Not in heaven. A baptized child, a victim of war, an innocent life cut short. The Pope's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced through doctrine, through mercy, through everything the Church had ever taught about innocence and grace. None of it prepared him for this moment. The child did not plead, he did not beg, he did not ask to be saved. He simply stood there, waiting, waiting to be seen, waiting to be acknowledged, waiting for the living to remember the forgotten. And in that silent gaze, Pope Pius XII understood that this apparition was not meant to terrify him. It was meant to reveal something far more disturbing than fear. Pope Pius XII could not speak at once. The presence before him shattered every natural assumption of justice and mercy he had carried into that chapel. A child stood before him, wounded by war, untouched by hatred, and yet bound by suffering beyond death. His voice finally broke the silence. "You are baptized?" the Pope asked quietly. The child nodded. A simple gesture, certain, undeniable. Baptism, the washing away of original sin. Baptism, the gateway to grace. Baptism, the promise that the soul belongs to God. Pius XII felt his heart tighten. "You committed no grave sin," he continued, already knowing the answer. Again the child shook his head. No rebellion,
no mortal fault, no conscious rejection of God. Then why? Why was this soul not wrapped in the peace of heaven? The Pope's mind turned instinctively to theology, to councils, to doctrine, to the writings of the saints. He knew that purgatory was not a place of punishment like hell, but of purification, a mercy, not a curse. But purification from what? Before him stood a soul too young to have chosen evil, too small to have fully understood temptation. The Pope felt a tremor pass him, and the question escaped his lips, raw and unguarded, not as a theologian, but as a shepherd of souls. What sin could chain a child? The light around the boy dimmed slightly, as if burdened by the weight of the question itself. I did not choose it. I did not know it. The Pope listened, scarcely breathing. I carry what was left unfinished, what was never healed, what was never prayed for. Pius XII felt the ground shift beneath him. This was no simple matter of personal guilt. The suffering before him did not flow from the child's actions, but from something larger, darker, and far more unsettling. The consequences of a broken world, the scars of violence passed on to the innocent, the silence of those who survived but forgot. And in that moment, the Pope understood that purgatory was not only about what a soul had done, but about what remained unresolved when death arrived too soon.
For a long moment, the child said nothing. The silence grew heavy, pressing against Pope Pius XII like an unseen weight. The light surrounding the boy dimmed further, no longer warm, no longer gentle, but strained, as though bearing a burden far greater than his small form should ever have known. Then the child spoke again, not with accusation, not with anger, but with a calm that was more frightening than any cry. I do not suffer for what I did, he said. The words struck the Pope like a wound. The child took a slow step forward. With each movement, the air itself seemed to resist him, as if even mercy required effort in this place. I suffer, the child continued, for what was done around me. Images flooded the Pope's mind, not as visions, but as understanding. Adults shouting orders, bombs falling without warning, hands that built weapons instead of shelter, voices that justified destruction in the name of victory. The sins of the grown, the child said quietly, the choices made without us. Pius XII felt his chest tighten. He had spoken often of collective guilt, of the moral consequences of war, but never had those ideas stood before him with such devastating clarity. And when death came, the child went on, there was no repair, no prayer spoken over broken bodies, no repentance offered for stolen lives, no plea lifted to heaven on behalf of the innocent. The boy's gaze did not waver. I suffer for the indifference, he said. Not hatred, not cruelty, indifference. For the world that moved on too quickly, for the living who survived and forgot, for the silence that followed the screams. The Pope felt his knees weaken. And I suffer, the child whispered, his voice now barely more than breath, for the prayers that were never said. Masses never offered, rosaries never begun, names never spoken aloud. Each unspoken prayer, the child revealed, left a wound unhealed, not in God's mercy, but in the soul's preparation to receive it. Pius XII understood then with terrible clarity. Purgatory was not only purification from personal fault, it was the place where what the world had broken was slowly repaired, through suffering, through mercy, through the charity of the living. And some souls suffered not because they had chosen evil,
but because no one had chosen love for them. The child lifted his eyes, and the light around him trembled. Then he spoke the truth that would haunt the Pope for the rest of his life. We suffer not only for what we did, but for what the world refused to repair. The words echoed through the chapel, sinking into stone, into silence, into the heart of the Church itself. In that moment, Pius XII knew that war did not end at death. Its consequences followed souls into eternity, until love, prayer, and sacrifice completed what violence had left undone. And the greatest suffering of all was not pain. It was being forgotten.
The child's words faded, but their weight remained. In the stillness of the chapel, Pope Pius XII became painfully aware of something more terrifying than fire or suffering. Silence. Not the holy silence of prayer, but the absence of remembrance. The child did not speak of flames or torment. He spoke of waiting. Waiting for a name to be spoken. Waiting for a prayer to rise. Waiting for the living to remember that death does not end responsibility. The Pope understood then how many souls like this one existed. Children whose lives were cut short by war. Children who left the world without farewell or funeral. Children whose suffering did not cry out in hell, but lingered quietly in purgatory. They were not condemned. They were delayed. Delayed by a world too busy rebuilding cities to remember the souls buried beneath them. Delayed by survivors eager to forget rather than to mourn. Delayed by a silence that settled after the guns fell quiet. No one spoke their names. No one prayed for them. No one interceded. And without that charity, these souls remained suspended, not because God withheld mercy, but because the living withheld love. Pius XII felt a cold realization take hold of him. War did not end when the bombs stopped falling. It continued in forgotten graves, in unoffered masses, in rosaries left unprayed. The violence of war reached beyond time, leaving wounds not only in nations, but in eternity itself. The Pope thought of Europe preparing for peace treaties and memorials, while countless souls waited in the shadows, unseen and unheard. And he understood that the greatest cruelty of war was not only what it destroyed in life, but what it abandoned in death. The child's gaze remained fixed on him, not accusing, not pleading, simply waiting. Waiting for the Church to remember, waiting for the faithful to speak, waiting for the silence to be broken. In that sacred moment, Pius XII realized that every forgotten soul was a question posed to the living. Will you remember us, or will you let the war continue in silence? Pope Pius XII could no longer stand. The weight of what he had seen, of what he had understood, crushed the strength from his legs. Slowly, deliberately, he sank to his knees upon the cold marble floor. For the first time that night, tears filled his eyes. Not the quiet tears of private sorrow, but the kind that come when the soul can no longer bear what it carries alone. Before him stood a child who had suffered not because of personal guilt, but because the world had failed in love. And behind that child, Pius XII sensed countless others, unseen, unnamed, waiting in silence. His voice broke. "I am sorry," the Pope whispered. "Sorry for the delays. Sorry for the silence. Sorry for the prayers never spoken loudly enough." His shoulders trembled. This was no public address, no diplomatic statement, no measured papal declaration. This was a shepherd kneeling before the wounded of his own flock. For a moment, he covered his face with his hands, his body shaking. It was a sight few would ever witness,
a pope strict of authority, of certainty, of composure. Then he raised his head, and he began to pray. Not silently, not cautiously. He prayed aloud, his voice echoing through the empty chapel, psalms of mercy, pleas for forgiveness, intercessions for souls who had no one left to speak for them. He prayed for children whose names were never written down, for lives erased by fire and steel, for souls delayed by the indifference of the living. Each word came with effort, as though drawn from deep within his chest. His hands trembled, his breath faltered. Never before had a pope prayed with such urgency, not as a ruler of the church, but as a witness to unbearable truth. And in that trembling prayer, Pius XII offered what the world had failed to give: remembrance, intercession, love. As Pope Pius XII continued to pray, something in the chapel began to change. The air, once heavy and oppressive, slowly softened. The crushing silence gave way to a stillness that felt different, no longer abandoned, but attentive, as if heaven itself were listening. The Pope's voice grew steadier. He prayed not as a theologian, but as a father, not as a judge, but as an intercessor. Each prayer rose like a fragile offering, imperfect, human, yet filled with love. And with every word spoken, the light surrounding the child began to shift. It grew warmer. The pale, strained glow that once clung to the boy softened into something gentler. The wounds etched into his form did not disappear, but they no longer seemed to burn with the same quiet agony. The tension in his small shoulders eased. The weight he carried lightened, if only slightly. Pius XII noticed it at once. Suffering was not erased, but it was relieved. The Pope understood then what centuries of saints had taught. Prayer does not always free a soul instantly, but it strengthens them to endure and draws them closer to the moment of release. Tears streamed down his face as he continued. He offered masses in his heart. He entrusted the child to the mercy of Christ. He called upon the prayers of the Church, militant, suffering, and triumphant, united beyond time. The child looked at him again. For the first time, something new appeared in his eyes. Hope. Not fulfillment, not escape. Hope. "Thank you," the child said softly. Then, after a pause, he spoke words that struck with quiet force. "One prayer is never enough." The Pope closed his eyes. He understood. A single prayer opens the door, but love must continue to walk through it. Souls in purgatory are not saved by moments, but by perseverance, by remembrance that refuses to fade, by charity that does not grow tired. The child's form began to grow faint, not vanishing, but withdrawing, as if returning to a place of waiting rather than suffering alone. The light dimmed once more, yet it no longer felt cold. Pius XII remained kneeling long after the vision receded, his heart changed forever. He now knew this truth. Prayer does not end suffering instantly, but it ensures that no soul suffers alone.
No official document bears the mark of this night. No encyclical, no diary entry, no formal testimony sealed in the Vatican archives. And that silence was not accidental. The Church was at war, not with weapons, but with chaos. Rome lived under constant threat. Panic spread easily. Words carried consequences far beyond their intention. A public account of a child's soul suffering in purgatory during a time when millions of parents were already grieving lost children could have shattered fragile hope and ignited fear instead of faith. Pius XII understood this. He had seen how easily despair could spread, how quickly sorrow could turn into accusation, how deeply wounded the world already was. This vision was not meant to become doctrine. It was not meant to become proclamation. It was a warning entrusted to a shepherd, not a spectacle offered to the crowds. So the Pope remained silent. What was spoken that night was passed only in whispers, among a few trusted souls, within the language of prayer rather than ink. It lived not in documents, but in the decisions that followed, in masses quietly offered, in intercessions intensified, in a deeper urgency for the forgotten dead. During wartime, the Vatican guarded not only secrets of diplomacy, but the fragile spiritual balance of a suffering world. Some truths Pius XII knew must be carried privately, not because they are false, but because they are too heavy to bear publicly. And yet, silence does not mean absence. The memory of that night did not vanish. It remained alive in the Pope's conscience, shaping his prayers, sharpening his sense of responsibility, and deepening his understanding of purgatory as a place where love still labors to repair what violence destroyed. The vision was never written down, but its echo endured, quietly, faithfully, waiting for a time when hearts would be ready to listen. Long after the vision had faded, Pope Pius XII remained alone in the chapel. The child was gone. The light had withdrawn. The air had returned to stillness. But nothing within him was the same. That night, Pope Pius XII came to understand a truth both sobering and demanding. Purgatory does not recognize age. It is not reserved for the old or the guilty alone. It is the place where every soul, young or old, is made ready to receive the fullness of God's presence. Innocence does not eliminate the need for healing when death arrives amid violence and disorder. The Pope understood that suffering in purgatory was not a denial of mercy, but the final work of it. He also understood something the world often forgets. Prayer is not optional. It is not a pious gesture reserved for the devout. It is a responsibility of the living toward the dead. Souls in purgatory cannot repair what remains incomplete on their own. They depend on love offered from this side of death, through masses, sacrifices, remembrance, and intercession. And when prayer is withheld, suffering is prolonged. Most unsettling of all was the truth that innocence does not shield a soul from the consequences of a broken world. Children did not choose war. They did not choose hatred. They did not choose destruction. Yet they bore its weight. The Pope recognized that sin is never isolated. It spreads outward, touching lives far removed from the original act. The innocent often suffer not because of what they have done, but because of what others have failed to repair. That night revealed to him the terrible reach of human sin and the even greater reach of divine mercy when love responds. From that moment on, Pope Pius XII carried a deeper urgency in his prayers. Every forgotten soul became a silent appeal. Every child lost to war became a reminder that salvation history continues beyond the battlefield, beyond death, into the hidden labor of mercy. The lesson of that night was clear. The living are never absolved of responsibility for the dead, and heaven waits, not for justice alone, but for love to complete what violence has left unfinished. The vision ended, but its warning did not. War did not disappear with the passing of the 20th century. It merely changed its face. Today, bombs still fall, cities still burn, and once again, it is children who pay the highest price
for sins they did not choose. They die in ruined homes. They die on roads of exile. They die before they can speak their first full prayer. And when the world moves on, their souls do not vanish. They wait, not in anger, not in condemnation, but in hope that someone, somewhere, will remember them. What Pope Pius XII witnessed was not bound to his time alone. It was a revelation meant for every generation that believes suffering ends when the headlines fade. It does not. Souls still wait in purgatory. Souls still depend on the charity of the living. Souls still suffer in silence, not because God has abandoned them, but because love has grown tired. The Church teaches that prayer crosses every boundary, time, death, even eternity itself. A single prayer may seem small, but it is never insignificant. It is a hand reaching into the darkness, telling a soul, "You are not forgotten." If you are watching this now, you are not here by accident. You are being asked to remember, to pray for the children whose names were never written down, to pray for the souls lost to violence, neglect, and silence, to pray for those who cannot ask anymore. If you carry a soul in your heart, a child, a loved one, a forgotten name, write it in the comments. Let us pray together as one body across the distance between the living and the dead. Because the final truth revealed that night remains unchanged. Heaven is not delayed by God, but by the silence of the living. Break that silence. Pray. Pray for the souls in purgatory who wait in silence. Comment, "I pray for them," as an act of remembrance. Share this video as a work of mercy, so no soul is forgotten.